Hello and welcome to Newscentre. I am Ashmit Kumar. Now, China's refusal to ease its stranglehold over its rare earth minerals has upended supply chains that are critical to automakers, semiconductor companies, as well as aerospace manufacturers across the world. The electric vehicle industry especially finds itself in a spot of bother as the curbs have the potential to impact production in a major way. Now, China accounts for 90% of the world's rare earth magnet supply and is a critical component for manufacturing electric vehicles. EV makers rely on rare earth magnets because they offer high torque in a small size, improved energy efficiency, better range performance, and less heat and energy. Now, the curbs have caused concerns among Indian EV makers as well. Remember, India imported 460 tons of rare earth magnets in 2024, and virtually all of that coming in from China. Leading electric vehicle companies, including the likes of Bajaj Auto, TVS Motor and Tata Motors, have told us that the situation is concerning and has the capacity to bring production to a grinding halt.
The whole supply chain of the world resides in China. So if this is true, we are still trying to come to terms with the facts, all the facts. But if this is true, it would mean that, and if it doesn't change, then in a matter of weeks, the entire Indian EV industry will grind to a halt.
I would be wrong in saying that we don't have dependence on this. There is dependence. As SIAM president, SIAM as well as ACMA both are very closely interacting with the government. Government has been very supportive on this issue, in terms of reaching out to the Chinese government also, the relevant ministries there. And we hope that the issue might be, taken care of.
This EV supply chain disruption is certainly going to pose a short to medium term challenge. And I think as India plans its EV strategy and EV plan, the adoption will have to be phased in or phased up, along with developing an Atmanirbhar supply chain in India, where India, as the world's leading two-wheeler market, which has produced 3 of the top 5 companies by volume globally, has its own supply chain, its own R&D, its own capability, and EV is really built on that basis.
Well, to take this discussion ahead, I'm now joined by Jayant Dasgupta, former Indian Ambassador to the WTO, and Hormazd Sorabjee, editor, Autocar India. Mr. Sorabjee, Mr. Dasgupta, thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Sorabjee, I'll come to you first. Give us the context for the benefit of our viewers. Rare earth magnets, what exactly are they and why are they so crucial for the Indian autocar space, or is it particularly the case for EV manufacturers?
Well, I'll just give some background. I think rare earth materials, they're not really rare and then you can't find them, but just in terms of concentration, because they are literally minuscule specks in earth. And really, that's why the extraction process, the refining process, hugely capital intensive, energy intensive, and that's why China has got a stranglehold on it. I mean, just to give an analogy, it's like pulling out a needle out of a haystack when you get rare earth materials. So really a very kind of a difficult process and very, very capital intensive as well. Can't be replicated. China has got the stranglehold on this. And it's not just, of course, anything that has a motor, there is a rare earth application. You've got other older motors, which I think use ferrite, but rare earth motors are far more efficient, and that's why they are used now extensively. Of course, in electric motors, the magnets which we have, the rare earth magnets, that's what we kind of get as a finished product. The rare earths are converted into magnets. So any electrical motor we have it can even be in your power window switches, it can be in your electric steering. So not only restricted to EVs, but anything really with a compact, powerful motor in it, you need rare earth magnets, and that's the way forward. So clearly, I think it's a component, a very critical part of the supply chain for making cars.
Mr. Sorabjee, that brings me to my next question. The industry is raising alarm bells with respect to the current situation. Give us your perspective. We're seeing predictions and we're seeing estimates ranging from some of the new launches being rolled back all the way to production stopping mid-July. How severe is the situation? What are the inventory levels that we're looking at? And how bad is the situation likely to pan out if these export restrictions from China continue?
I think this is a real serious problem because it's a component which has to be, if it doesn't come, you can't complete the car, you can't finish the car. Inventory levels, I don't think it's very, very high. This is not something you would stock. It's just a commodity which you get. So really, this has come as a whammy. I mean, we know it's collateral damage from the tariff wars, which have been precipitated, between America and China. And now it's a global problem, and we are also having a bigger, deeper problem because obviously of the geopolitical issues that we face. So more of a challenge for us than other countries. But and I think it seems to be a very, very long process, a very difficult process. I don't think inventories stock is very long. And I think, it could be from next week to the next month, we'd see some issues in production.
Right. Mr. Dasgupta, let me come to you in terms of motivations as far as China is concerned. April 4th is when we had these export restrictions kick in. And since then, as Mr. Sorabjee was pointing out, a long circuitous process of getting the approvals and getting the clearances as far as these shipments are concerned. Tell us what's the rationale, what's the thinking behind this decision by China? Is it India specific? Is it affecting all countries and manufacturers across all countries?
The decision taken by the Chinese authorities is applicable to all countries. And you mentioned that India imported about 440 tons of rare earth magnets in 2024. Well, Toyota requires 10,000 tons of rare earth magnets. And this year itself, our import would have gone up to about 770 tons of magnets. So it is increasing. And the larger manufacturing countries like Japan, Korea, and of course the US, because Tesla uses the same magnets. So everybody would be hit. Germany has been hit already. The French have been hit. Britain has been hit. So everybody has been hit. And this is just a way of the Chinese telling the world that, the US may impose sanctions, but, by a small gesture, we can bring an industry to a complete halt. In a sense, the EV industry now has increasingly been, gaining popularity. People are reluctant to invest in a new vehicle, which is petrol-driven or diesel-driven. At the most, they may buy a CNG-driven vehicle or a hybrid vehicle, and the preferences are moving towards electric vehicles. And electric vehicles can't be built without the rare earth magnets, even though they form a small part of the total value of the car.
Right. Mr. Dasgupta, let me follow that up. In fact, some conversations with the automakers tell us that from the total bill of materials, this is a very small component, but is a critical component nonetheless, and it therefore comes in the way of churning out those vehicles. Just a sense, Mr. Dasgupta, in terms of India wanting to diversify where it's sourcing these rare earth magnets from, is there a realistic option on the cards of sourcing it, given that our supply is not great? You pointed out 460 tons as compared to 10,000 tons sought by Toyota alone. Is there a realistic case to be made for a diversification of our sourcing from countries such as Japan, such as Korea? Is that something that's feasible, something that's possible?
70% of the rare earth is mined in China, and 90% of the rare earth magnets are made in China. So there is no question of getting it from Japan or Korea or any other country. There may be one or two very small suppliers, but then everybody would queue up, and the higher priced car maker would obviously buy from them to tide over the crisis. So it is not a feasible solution. The thing is that in the medium term to the long term, one must invest in innovation, in research and development, and try to find an alternative to rare earth magnets, if that could be done at all. So that is something which we'll have to live with.
Right. Right. Let me take that across to Mr. Sorabjee. Mr. Sorabjee, coming to you for near-term solutions, you pointed out that the inventory levels of rare earth magnets could only be a few days to a few weeks as far as different automakers are concerned. In terms of near-term solutions, we understand a delegation is expected to leave from India. The fact that they haven't received their visa and they're still waiting for their visa indicates that, yes, it's going to be a long procedural affair. What are some of these near-term solutions that India can look to explore in addressing the immediate concerns?
Well, I think, as Mr. Dasgupta said, there's no real alternative for sourcing the rare earth magnets. Japan makes a very, very small quantity. It can't even fulfill its domestic demand. I think there was a facility in Ukraine which got bombed, and, it's just basically down to China. Well, I think, to be honest, and India is in a more difficult situation. Let's say in Germany, there right now, from what I understand, we have got absolutely no approvals. Germany, it's a slower process. About, I think, 25% of the total approvals have come through, but zero in India. I think clearly we would have to kind of solve this geopolitical deadlock in some way. Look, let's be honest. China has had difficulty investing in India. We've also had difficulty in getting visas for Chinese to come here. So I think this is in a way of just flexing muscle. So we will have to kind of at the highest level figure out a way to kind of ease this sort of deadlock. I think this is really an economic war in that sense, and clearly I think we would have to show something to the Chinese that this is a market that they can also benefit from. Right now, behaving like this with us really, because we are not a big market for Chinese products, they can do that. Whereas if you look at Germany, though the EU has had issues with China, Germany as a country, frankly, it has for automakers, a large amount of their business and turnover and profits come from China, whether it's Volkswagen, big German companies like that. So, it's not surprising that Germany is the one country that has got the fastest approvals as a result. So, I think it's a geopolitics playing out over here that has to be addressed for this kind of issue to be resolved in the short term.
You mentioned geopolitics, and we've seen in the recent past some amount of hesitation here within India in terms of allowing the likes of BYD, allowing the likes of Leap Motors to actually come and make a foray here into the Indian market. Is that a kind of relaxation of policy lever that perhaps the government could look at?
FDI for these companies is very, very difficult to get, impossible to get. So, some have used backdoor entries. Leap Motors now coming in with Stellantis. We've seen BYD, they're only importing cars right now. They can't invest in setting up a facility. We've seen SAIC, which owns the MG brand. They've kind of, with JSW taking a stake in MG Motor India, that's one way of doing it. But direct, the FDI is just not there. So I think clearly I think there will have to be some relaxation, not only in the auto sector, but, in other sectors as well. Because clearly on this, we have no other option.
Mr. Dasgupta, I'll come to you for one final closing comment. In terms of relaxations that Mr. Sorabjee is asking for, is there a ray of hope? More recently, we've talked about comments coming in from no less than the Prime Minister himself, talking about normalcy having been restored to the border areas, about not allowing differences to turn into disputes. Is there a ray of hope that perhaps there could be some relaxation of the muscle flexing we've seen more recently between the two countries?
I would be slightly pessimistic on that score. Whatever is happening on the border has got nothing to do with this. And China is doing it irrespective of who's on the other side of the table. So India will get rough treatment from the Chinese. And as Mr. Sorabjee said, I entirely agree. They will drive a hard bargain, whether it is BYD, which is selling much more in Europe and other parts of the world than even Tesla, or they want relaxation in the visas that Chinese nationals are getting now. So they would drive a hard bargain, and I don't think we have many options left.
Right. A bleak situation at that, Mr. Sorabjee, Mr. Dasgupta, thank you so much for joining us, giving us more perspective on the immediate concerns and the issues that the auto industry as a whole and the EV sector particularly is looking at going forward in light of those export restrictions on rare earth magnets from China. But let's move ahead. Just days after